Hello, this is a mini lecture. It's the 5 building blocks of sound design and specifically how loudspeaker processing fits into an overall system design. The 5 building blocks paradigm. It's a teaching tool for me to kind of understand, to help students understand how sound system signal flow works and the 5 general major categories of equipment that you encounter in a sound system. And it all starts with the sources, right? Mics, instruments, DIs, a CD player, things that make sound, right? And they first thing they do is they go from block 1 to block 2 and they get plugged into a console. And those sources typically travel mic level, right? Microphones and DIs travel mic level, but you may encounter something line level like a keyboard or a CD player. They may also come in digital as well. You know, a Dante source, that sort of thing to the console. But you got your first 2 building blocks, and we all know what consoles do, right? Consoles mix sound. They mix multiple sources together at relative levels. They also take inputs and they send them to outputs so you can go to multiple destinations. And along the way, you may use a console to tweak sound, right? Make it sound better, use a little EQ, some compression, kind of tweak the sound. And then from the console, this is where it starts getting more interesting. We gotta get to, we typically through a loudspeaker processor. And the loudspeaker processing, as I'm going to show you in a moment, may or may not be a separate unit. But anytime you want to EQ the room, right? The room has a particular resonance at 200 hertz and you want to cut it out of a graphic EQ, that kind of thing. That's loudspeaker processing. If you want to EQ wedges so they don't feedback, that's loudspeaker processing. Or if you want to fix an issue with the loudspeakers themselves, or you want to cross over between the mains and subs, that sort of thing. That is all loudspeaker processing. So that's the next thing that happens. And notice how those arrows are blue there. That's to indicate we're at line level. We're no longer dealing with mic levels. The consoles, its preamps, has brought it up to line level. And so we're either digital or line level, and we go through the loudspeaker processing, and then we go to the power amp. And the job of the power amp is pretty obvious. It's to provide additional gain. It's to convert it back into analog, because speakers are analog, if you have indeed gone digital before. And we want to take that line level signal and ramp up its power. We typically raise the current and we raise the voltage up so we can push those loudspeakers and make it loud. And the last step, our 5th building block, is pretty obvious. It's the loudspeakers themselves and their transducers, and they're going to convert this voltage into acoustic pressure. And notice that arrow is red there to indicate that it is speaker level. So where this gets odd is that these different bubbles, these different building blocks, they can combine together. And one typical combination is to put the loudspeaker processing in the console itself. So you take your typical digital console and you say you're doing monitors with it. You're going to use graphic EQs, right, to ring the wedge, or parametric EQs. And that's going to be done on the console. In the old days, in the analog days, you'd have a rack of graphic EQs off to the side. And in that situation, you have a separate loudspeaker processor. But in the modern realm, you're going to use your digital EQ on the console itself to deal with feedback. And so the loudspeaker processing and the console are combined together. Another common combination is to put the loudspeaker processing in the power amp itself. Way you might see this at NESCOM is if you use our VRX 915Ms, the biamped wedges we have. If you want to use those in biamped mode, where a separate amplifier drives the woofer and a separate amplifier drives the tweeter, we've got presets in our amplifiers, because our amplifiers here at NESCOM have EQ and compression and limiting and crossovers and all that stuff built into them. So you can do this processing to split the bands between high and low in the amp itself. And this paradigm is very popular in the professional world. We don't see it too much here at NESCOM, but the big boys, the L Acoustics PAs, the D&B PAs, the JBL PAs, they typically use the DSP in the amps themselves. The amps do the limiting, the amps do the filtering, the amps do the crossovers, the amps do the delays. If you're going to time align the front fills and the mains, you may do that with processing in the amps itself. Another combination is the active loudspeaker or powered loudspeaker. And this is very common. We see this at NESCOM. And this is where the amplifier resides in the speaker itself. So you need a power cable, but you don't need a separate power amp. In this particular drawing, I've put the loudspeaker processor before the power amp. And the loudspeaker processor is there to, change the tone of the PA, add some delay, maybe limit, any kind of thing you want to do with loudspeaker processing. And you may or may not need that separate processor, but we have a loudspeaker processor. We have this exact combination at Nescom. We've got a JBL drive rack and we plug them into our VRX powered speakers all the time. So this is a really common paradigm. Another one is this one, where you just take a digital console and you do all the EQ on that, and you then drive an active powered loudspeaker. This is probably the most common small format PA today, and at Nescom we do this all the time, right? You EQ your speakers, you add some delay if you've got an array you need or multiple separated loudspeakers, and you do that all in the console itself, and then you go out to a powered loudspeaker. And we could swap that JBL for a Meyer speaker, and this starts to look a lot like our PA in the Gracie. Yet another combo is put the console and the loudspeaker processing in the power amp all in one. What is that? That is the classic club band PA, and this is where I learned to do sound, how I learned to do sound in high school, using these sort of combo. It's all analog. You've got your graphic EQ on board, you got your power amp on board, and you got your console on board, and then you plug it into a passive, i.e. unpowered loudspeaker. So this is the very, very common in the musician world. So there are a variety of ways these things can combine. And the purpose of this short lecture was to talk about how this loudspeaker processing module there in the middle of the 5 building blocks can move around and can be in various locations. What I think is important to you, if this is new to you, you're going to want to memorize these 5 building blocks. For those of you that are kind of not new to sound design and kind of understand how systems work, I think this is a great structure for teaching other people, for sorting things out. Where's the loudspeaker processing today? Where's the power amp today? Is it in the speaker? Does the speaker need a power cable as well as a speaker cable, or instead of a speaker cable? Those sorts of things when you're wiring a stage, think in these 5 building blocks. It's simple stuff. It's easy to digest, but I think it will really help you understand a sound system.